Hello and welcome, new and old Pikmin fans. Originally, Kevin was going to do this video unscripted. A lot of people have been saying that it's... So, yeah, I think you understand why I'm not doing that now. Nintendo is completely out of control. Options. Yeah, options. In the initial reveal of the Direct, Miyamoto himself explains how the Switch allows for a simpler type of controls, and how we will be playing from the perspective of the Pikmin near the ground. But here's the thing, what other kinds of controls are left for Pikmin? What does a camera angle even tell us about the game? And how does the Switch, who has adopted the standard button layout, contribute to such an easier scheme? The answer is, it probably doesn't do anything at all. Now, Pikmin has been around for 20 years. Which is pretty old in terms of gaming and technology. Makes me curious though, what was your first Pikmin game that you played or even watched? Just curious as to what controls you started playing with. Speaking of which, why not take a look at all of them? I mean, it won't take us long at all. Ah, Z GameCube. Pretty good for a first go, honestly. While the mechanics in the first game were not very user-friendly, Pikmin 2 stuck to it and vastly improved options to make more things in the control of the player. Pikmin, while on the GameCube, had you using both sticks for movement, all to maximize the control of both captains and the Pikmin. An extremely intuitive system where the main stick controls not only Olimar, but the cursor too. And if you tilt the stick only slightly, Olimar doesn't move at all, but rather the cursor does. This style of movement allows you to be precise when needed, and your aim is already where it should be, exactly where you're headed. As for the other stick, dubbed the C stick on the GameCube, you will move your entire squad with this tool. Typically referred to as swarming. This handy feature is used for getting Pikmin out of or further away from potential danger. Swarming also saves time by allowing you to pick up items or attack enemies / obstacles with all your Pikmin at once, instead of getting carpal tunnel from mashing the A button. Don't get me wrong, you still will need to spam the throw button, because many enemies tower over Olimar and his Pikmin. More importantly though, this is my favorite feature in Pikmin, added in Pikmin 2, while holding the throw button, you can quickly cycle through the colors and growth stages of your Pikmin, which I can't understate the usefulness of this feature. The more mature Pikmin are faster, but the flowers will, fall marginally slower. I mean, the short movies show you this. That's not just a little gag, that literally happens in the game. Not to that extent, but it does happen. So maybe you'll want to throw flowers on items, but lower tier Pikmin on the enemies. Also, your Pikmin you throw into Kennybot buds will get reset back to leaf. So throw leaves, pretty simple, right? I'm probably overthinking this feature, but I really appreciate it, and I like how it's mapped to the D-pad, making swaps quick and simple, where left and right is for colors and up and down is for the leaf, bud, and flower. As for other features, you whistle with B and dismiss the Switch captains with X and Y respectively, while L centers the camera direction behind your captain is facing, and R changes the distance between the camera and Olimar, while Z swaps between over-the-shoulder and overhead camera perspectives. These first adventures of Pikmin were also ported to the Wii under the NPC line. You've most likely played this version of the first Pikmin games, if I had to guess, just purely because the Wii sold better than the GameCube. Due to the controller limitations, however, the Wii had to make some interesting decisions, such as Swarm being mapped to D-pad down and controlled with the Wiimote pointer, which is the same thing that controls the cursor's position. The way the games played didn't change much, so no need to reiterate aside from how Pikmin 1 got Pikmin type swaps. That's right, you literally had to finagle Olimar around the army in Pikmin 1 in the It was terrible. That is like one of the worst parts about playing the original Pikmin 1, and that's why they fixed it in the Wii version. I never played NPC, but judging how controls work in Pikmin 3, I'm under the assumption that the cursor was relative to the screen, rather than top-down as in GameCube. And I mean that any foreground features can obscure spots, not only visually but mechanically, where your cursor will get caught on collision. It's not a huge deal, but it can lead you to throwing Pikmin backwards compared to what you might expect. Welcome to the Dark Ages, boys! I commend anyone who played this on the original console because, man, these controls are worse than taking a hammer to my head. Why? Why did they keep the way that whistle worked on the Wiimote? I know it might sound strange at first because the button names are different, but in reality, they're both trigger buttons. Like, huh? Why did you have to reinvent the wheel here? I know they added new features to Pikmin 3, such as ZL functioning much like Zelda, where now it doesn't only reset to your camera, but also locks on the enemies. And charging which is mapped to whatever the dismiss button is as long as you're locked onto a target. And of course we can't forget dodging, the replacement for the evasiveness of swarm, which is left and right on the D-pad. Pikmin 3 certainly uses a screen relative cursor, despite still having controls that uses a stick. This was the case no matter what. Sadly, I don't see this style of aiming for sticks going away anytime soon. Now, I know I kind of blew past that last part, because this right now is our final stop in the history of Pikmin controls, and where I see is extremely likely to spell our future. It also gets rid of poor choices with the mapping of buttons. You know, like correcting what button whistles! While I think the action menu is cumbersome, it does house only actions important to planning stuff, only for exploring or prepping for battle basically. Treasury was also reworked entirely to make deploying and commanding Pikmin ease... Wait a minute. There it is! All these quality of life features we received. That's the Dandori! The auto Pikmin throw when you hold A while targeting, dismissing all but the current selected type, and charging getting reworked to only be the current selected Pikmin type. It also only puts the perfect amount of Pikmin to lift collectibles when you charge them. Nintendo will also continue to use screen relative aiming if we truly do have a constant over-the-shoulder camera. Our little red goober is really ripping off Mario with their own Lakitu. I do believe we haven't seen how the game's perspective really will look. I full-heartedly believe that what we got was a fancy camera shot. Really wish they had shown us some UI, but I guess that's why we didn't get any gameplay first. When it comes down to it, I think we're going to return to the camera of the first two games, because Pikmin 3's was set in place and really distant from the player, but Pikmin 1 and Pikmin 2 was really up close and personal with the characters, with only the furthest camera option almost resembling the Pikmin 3 perspective. Pikmin 4 will likely be structured to look like a larger-than-life adventure by tightening the perspective and increasing the awe of adventure. I assume that's why so many walls are taller so far in the first level, to restrict the vision even further. Basically, I don't think the huge selling point from the initial reveal will be as mind-blowing as you most likely thought. The Dandori stuff might actually be a big deal for those who had the original Pikmin 3 but skipped out on the deluxe version, because as annoying as I find these actions to be centered around the selected type, I finally understand why they did it. Changing the throwing mechanics from nearest Pikmin to a rotating selection, and then trickling that decision down to other mechanics. You charge only one type, you dismiss all but the type you're already planning on using. You don't waste a single Pikmin when dividing up work, without even needing to expend a single thought. Pikmin 4's controls have been staring at us in the face, and they might already be on your Switch.